Hello everybody, today I'm going to be doing the Unpopular Opinions 2.0 tag. I was tagged by Alan from the Library of Alexandria a long while back, and I'll post the original tag in the description down below. I never did the first Unpopular Opinions tag, but I like the way the questions in this one are framed, so we're going to go with it. And keep in mind, these are my unpopular opinions, so if you disagree with me, chances are you have the more popular opinion. And we'll just go with this. So, number one, a genre great you don't get the hype for. For me, that's probably going to be urban fantasy. I just haven't quite gotten bitten by that bug. Now, there have been some books that I think could qualify as urban fantasy that I've enjoyed, such as the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. And I enjoyed Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo a few years ago. That's set at Yale University in modern times, dealing with secret societies. So it's considered dark academia, but I think it could bleed into urban fantasy. But I've never read the Dresden Files, and I feel like people who love the Dresden Files tend to love Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Unpopular opinion here, I never got into Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so I just don't know if it would be the genre for me. But maybe someday I'll be proven wrong about that. Number two, an adaptation you wish was never made. At one point in time, I would have said the Dune movie from the 80s, the one with Sting in it. I watched it as a teenager at a party, and I remember my friends at the time saying, the book is so much better. And I'm so glad they were right about that. And since then, we fortunately have had a much better Dune adaptation in recent times. So I really can't say that answer as much anymore, but I think my very mixed answer here is going to be the A Game of Thrones show, the adaptation of A Song of Ice and Fire, and hear me out about this. So I'm glad it was made for some reasons. For example, I was motivated to read the series partly because of this adaptation. That and a few longtime fans who were friends of mine cheering me on to read the books. I loved the casting of the show and I really enjoyed some of the episodes. My favorite was probably the battle at Blackwater Bay, that episode, and I think that was written by Martin. So I'm grateful for the show for many reasons, and at the same time, I'm kind of sad about it because I have a lot of friends who watched the show at the time and decided they didn't want to read the books because they saw the show. And I thought that was so sad because I love the books so much more than the show. And yes, I get it, the show is finished and the books aren't. I still recommend reading the books though. I still think they're worth it. And I also think it's kind of sad because it's so ingrained in our culture now. And that's a positive thing on the one hand. And on the other hand, I feel like you can never really quite experience those books the way that you could have experienced them at one point in time. It's just not the same anymore. So it just makes me a little sad about that. And then number three, a book or series you have to fight back your inner snob because you kind of think people just don't get it. And so I'm going to give you two answers for this because honestly, I don't have an answer for number four. So we're going to give you two answers for three. So one is Piranesi by Susanna Clark. And on the one hand, I get it. I don't recommend this book to everyone. And in fact, I did a video a while back called Books I Love That I Don't Recommend to Everyone. And this was one of those books because if you're not into that beautiful atmospheric prose that Susanna Clark writes in that book, and if you didn't connect to the character of Piranesi, who's a meticulous character who is alone in this surreal house with all these stairwells and statues and an ocean level floor, I can kind of understand maybe not connecting to the book. But on the other hand, I think where I feel myself having to hold myself back a little bit is when people say they didn't like the book just because of the mystery element, because I don't feel like that is where I feel like the book shines. I feel like there is a mystery that unfolds in the story, which is why so many people say to go into the book not knowing as much. However, I feel like so much of the story is beautiful to me because of this character, Piranesi, and his connection to the house and the way that that explores the theme of aloneness when we're connecting to our environment and feeling a connection with oneself and our surroundings versus loneliness, which is the absence of the other. And so I love the way that Susanna Clark explored that theme in this story, among other themes, and the way she tied in so many literary allusions in order to illustrate that. But again, it's not a book I recommend to everyone anyway. But I guess that's where I feel myself just disagreeing a little bit when people just attribute the success of the book to the mystery element. And then the other book that this comes up for me a little bit is with one of my favorite books of all time, and that's Stoner by John Williams. And here's the thing, like, I feel like the way John Williams wrote that book, it's beautiful in the way that it can allow a lot of different interpretations of the story. And I love books like that. I love books that elicit wonder and intrigue in the reader. And I feel like the character of William Stoner can do that for many readers. However, where I feel myself wanting to bite my tongue a little bit or having to bite my tongue a little bit is when I hear people say that this character was apathetic. Now, I can see the case for this character being considered passive, certainly, but I disagree when I hear that this character was apathetic. Apathy is the opposite of love. It is when you feel nothing, when you're basically dead inside, and I don't think that's the case for this character. I do feel like this character struggles with connection and with loneliness, but I don't think this character is apathetic. So I guess I just wholeheartedly disagree with that particular interpretation. But again, on the other hand, I do appreciate that this is a character that allows us space to wonder and be curious about. And then the next question is a book or series that you're tired of everyone hating on. And that's the one I don't have an answer to. I guess because I don't watch enough rant reviews. I don't know. But if you have an answer to this question, please let me know in the comment section below. And then number 5, a book or series everyone thinks is really powerful, but you didn't connect with. For me, I'm going to go with the recent book I read over this last year and reviewed, which is going to be Babel by R.F. Kuang. And so I appreciated that R.F. Kuang was exploring colonialism and translation magic, how things can be lost in translation, and how these kids are being brought to Oxford University for making money and profit off their translation skills. And so they're being very exploited, and how we're exploring the necessity of violence. So I appreciated what she was trying to explore in this story. And the concepts she had for it. However, I feel like the execution of this story didn't quite work for me. I know that from watching a speech she gave at Oxford University that she made it her mission to be very explicit with the themes of the story as an author and make sure that those were not shrouded in any way. And I understand that. And I'm not always against themes being very clear and overt, but I do want themes to leave me with more questions than answers rather than telling me how to feel and think. And I felt like there wasn't enough trust in me as a reader to wonder about things. As I just mentioned with Stoner, that's one of the highlights of the book for me, is that I feel like we have some room and space to wonder about this character. And I just didn't feel that with this book for me personally. I felt like with some of the things she was tackling, I actually think I might have preferred this to be a nonfiction approach, but I can understand, I guess, why some people liked it. It didn't really hit those emotional notes for me personally. I didn't really connect with the characters. I felt like some of the ways that things built up in the story felt a little abrupt when it came to very climactic moments. So it wasn't quite for me, and I know that it hit hard for a lot of readers. Next question, a character you don't get the hype for. And my answer for this is going to be Kaladin Stormblessed from the Stormlight Archive. I liked Kaladin. I didn't dislike Kaladin. I did enjoy Way of Kings and everything. But honestly, I think that many other people who are fans of that series, I just heard so many people say they wanted to marry Kaladin, that they loved Kaladin or wanted to be Kaladin. And he just never quite reached that level for me. He never reached the level of like A Song of Ice and Fire character, for example, or even First Law character, or even a Malazan character. He just didn't quite connect as deeply for me as some other characters I've read about. So I don't know. I guess I don't really quite feel that connection for that character on that level. I don't feel like characters have to be super fleshed out for me to have a connection with them, but in that case, that was one that just slightly missed the mark for me, I guess. And then next is a book or series everyone wants an adaptation for, but you don't. Okay, I'm the worst person to ask this question to because, I mean, on the one hand, I already mentioned A Song of Ice and Fire, a Game of Thrones adaptation, which I did watch, And I did watch the Dune adaptation, for example, but otherwise, I am the worst when it comes to watching adaptations. I have read so many books that I have not seen the adaptation for. So I'm not the best person to answer this question. I am a huge fan of Malazan Book of the Fallen, and when I was reading that series, I know there was a lot of conversation at the time about if Malazan were adapted, and there probably still are conversations about that. But honestly, if it were adapted, I don't know if I'd watch it because I just don't know if I need it. There's part of me that doesn't feel like I really need the adaptation because I enjoyed the books. I'd be happy for Ian C. Esselmont and Stephen Erickson if it got adapted and if it brought more readers. I would just hope that people wouldn't do what my experience was with talking to people during the A Game of Thrones adaptation, where they buy the books and then don't read them. I would hope that people would actually read the books if they got into the adaptation. But just for me, I just personally don't feel like I need that. And maybe I'd be proven wrong if I saw a trailer for it. I don't know. And then number 8, a book or series you think people have bias toward and don't really love hate as much as they claim. So this is a very difficult question to answer. I don't know how you assess how accurate people are on how much they love or hate something, how you quantify that. Uh, so I'm going to take this in a different direction. I know that Alan talked about Animander Rake in his Unpopular Opinions tag video for the character he doesn't get the hype for. And I have to agree with Alan, but I'm going to take this a slightly different direction. I did do a wrap-up video recently where I talked about potential gender bias concerning 2 characters in Ian C. Esselmont's Knight of Knives. So you could check out that video there if you're curious for some thoughts on that. But rather than talk about those 2 characters again, I'm going to talk about 2 other characters in the Malazan series, including Animander Rake, who I just said Alan mentioned, and Tavor, who is a female leader in the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. And here's the thing. When I was reading this series, I did like Animander Rake at first. This is a character who's portrayed as kind of like an edgelord, mysterious character, and you get introduced to him in Gardens of the Moon. And with Tavor, I thought Tavor was incredibly compelling. I was so curious about this character. But as I was reading the series, I noticed so many people say that they didn't like Tavor because they couldn't get in her head, because you're never given her perspective of things. And I thought that was very interesting considering people seem to love Rake. And when I heard Stephen Erickson talk about his writing of Animander Rake, he said that he got people to, he thinks that part of the success of that character was the mystique he built around the character by not giving you that character's perspective, by not showing you into their internal world. And so you're mostly understanding this character through other character perspectives. But same with Tavor, but people love Rake and they don't love Tavor. And I'm the opposite. I felt like Rake started out interesting enough for me, but I found him less and less interesting compared to other characters in the series as I read on, and Tavor became more and more compelling for me, and I felt like very alone in that opinion. So that is my very unpopular opinion about that. Now, is there gender bias involved? Like, as I mentioned, a potential gender bias with Ian C. Esselmont's Knight of Knives in my wrap-up? I don't know. There's no way, again, to measure that either. There's no way of knowing for sure. It could be my own bias towards gender bias, who knows? But it is a question that comes to my mind. It's something that I wonder about. But anyway, there could be other factors involved again, and those are just my unpopular opinions. So please let me know your thoughts on my thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you so much to Alan for tagging me, and I'm going to go ahead and tag some people. So the first person I'm going to tag is Alex from Tall Guy Reads, and the reason I'm tagging Alex is because I think that Alex does a wonderful job of trying to understand opposing viewpoints if there's a book or series he personally doesn't connect with. He's always trying to bring out the positive aspects of that book or series and understand why other readers would connect to it. And that's something that I think is so important when it comes to being a sensitive reviewer. So that's something I greatly respect about Alex. Plus, Alex has tagged me in quite a few tag videos, and I feel so bad that I haven't gotten around to them. So Alex, if you want to do the tag, you're tagged. And I'm going to go ahead and tag some newer channels to me in case anybody wants to check out these channels because they're new to booktube and they're already off to an amazing start. So one of them is going to be Punk Rock Cereal Bowl. I've really enjoyed this channel so far, and I understand that he is a writer and he loves the process of rereading, as do I. So great channel name. Please check out that channel. And then another channel I'll go ahead and tag is Christopher Navo. Another new channel, has an amazing bookshelf, and it seems like he's very well read in fantasy, and I think he would have some interesting perspectives to add to this tag if he was interested. So your tag, Christopher. And then lastly, I'm going to go ahead and tag, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and tag the Black and Blue Collar Reader, another fantastic channel. He loves Baker. He also loves Malazan, and he's off to a start with reading that series. I'm going to go ahead and tag the Fantasy Thinker, Jared's channel. He is fantastic. He also is actually, he's rereading Malazan right now, and he's enjoying The Wars of Light and Shadow as well. And he has some great reviews. So I'm going to tag Jared. If you want to do the tag, consider yourself tagged. Thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on my thoughts in the comment section down below. And have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.